And so, with that in mind, and looking at the record, and we kind of discussed this already, but is that in the back of your mind and the live shows when you write?
Totally. We were just talking about this earlier. It's almost like, well, we played at London Calling
Sure.
in 2015, I think you said it was, and one of the first times we played over here, and we were on at 1 o'clock in the morning. We were like, this is going to be empty, everyone's going to be home at this time, like who stays out this long? And we went on stage and the room was busy and everybody just went wild, like, and they're jumping about and screaming and dancing and singing. And I think at that point it's just like, you can see what your music can do. So like whenever we go in the studio now, we will definitely kind of try and adapt the music and think about like, this is going to be cool live. Like, I mean, one of the tracks on our record, there's a new track called Sweat, which is literally written to be the best thing that you'll see live. Like, it's just like a high energy thing that you will see live and be like, oh my God, oh, wow. Like, I want people to stick on the record and be like, I need to go see that song live, you know?
Yeah.
Which kind of differs to like if you're just doing like fast, high energy rock and roll, like to try and create like a club.
Yeah, we always wanted to have, even though we are a band with guitars and synths and drums, we wanted it to have the effect of like sounding as good as when you go into a club and you hear like a really slickly produced like not slick but like, you know, like a really like well produced like big club record. And that kind of sound is like, if you can get that, but with a live band, that was our like goal to start with, and it's like we've stuck to that.
Is that a difficult process then to translate what you do on a record in a way that it suits live performances?
I think it's actually a lot easier to translate it to live than, like, quite a lot of the time we'll translate it to live and then revisit the recording.
Yeah.
It's just like new guitar parts or like new sub or something, like if the bottom end could be beefier or something, like, because you can't really tell in the studio as well as you can at a venue. If you're like, okay, this sounds really fat, and like the recording would sound better if it just had like this in it. So we'll revisit usually after we do live.
And then lyrically, is that a collective thing as well, or is that mostly?
I do the lyrics.
Okay.
We sometimes write the chorus lyrics together when we're kind of trying to work, because chorus lyrics are kind of different. You need something more universal sometimes with chorus lyrics, so that's kind of helps. But yeah, all the rest of it, I just write it.
And I wrote one thing down, and I think it's from a different interview you had, but you said the music is getting angrier.
Yeah.
So how come?
I think that it's like I think there's more of a kind of, it's harder to ignore what's going on in the world just now. So, especially in Britain, where we've got like Brexit and all that stuff. I think we played in Metropolis Festival like 2 days after the vote had happened, and I was just like, I'm sorry everyone, like we're from Scotland, we're not, like, we want to stay. Yeah, so it's kind of getting harder to ignore that stuff, and you're like, well, certainly for me, like, 'cause I'm quite involved in it all, like when you're trying to like interpret how you feel in the world, if the world is kind of going mad around you, then it plays on your mind a bit more than you're not just writing about like going out and having a good time.
Right.
Like there's a bigger world out there, and it seems to have caught fire. So,
but especially as a band, then, because you are in a way public, and then people have their opinions about you. So are there hesitations in what you can say, or what you as a band want to? Because, well, to put it differently, I think the way political songs, and I'm not saying that it's very political, but political songs used to be a lot more prevalent, I suppose.
Yeah.
So is that something you think about, or how people might perceive what you're saying?
I think like we don't want to beat people over the head with anything, and everyone in the band, like, I'm probably the most opinionated one anyway, so I don't want to be like dragging them all along with my kind of opinions as well. So I'm conscious of that. But yeah, I think that people are starting to realise maybe that kind of all songs are political in a way, especially in a time when politics is in so much flux. Choosing to not talk about politics is as political an act as like talking about it, because you kind of can't ignore what's going on at the moment. Like the rise of fascism is sort of seems to be happening again. So if you choose to avoid that, that is a political thing as well. And some of the music that we've written has been about this kind of idea of like just losing yourself and like forgetting about the world, and that I think in a way that is, it's not beating you over the head with like the politics of it, but it's still like, it's still a political choice that, I mean, not a directly political choice, but people are choosing to go out and forget about everything and just like get fucked, and that is like directly because things have gone quite strange.
So this escapism in a way, that,
exactly.
you've talked about this before, but so this escapism, is that what you in a way want people to take away from your shows, just a little escape from kind of the drudgery of
yeah, I hope so. It's sort of like someone described it as like kind of like sort of austerity glamour or something like that, you know, like, because obviously it's like there's not much money, but we're still like putting on like shiny clothes and putting on a big show, and like just kind of, it's like the excess of the 80s without any of the money.
Well, finally then, because you kind of mentioned the 80s and then the sounds, and then what I find interesting with bands like you, they try to kind of put a label on it. They call it dark disco punk, indie dance, pop funk. You get compared to other artists. What is your opinion on this, on genres, that kind of thing, and being kind of,
I think that
having to be defined in a way?
Yeah, well, whenever anyone asks us like, what is your music like, I'm just like, oh, I hate that question. like what do you say? It's like what we do. I don't know. It's like the accumulation of all the bands that we like together, and then a bit on top. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's. I really like bands that have an experimental edge to them, and they sound like they're trying to do something different, and they're trying to like throw a kind of spanner in the works a bit, but are still like pop music. They're still writing like pop music, and it's some stuff you can dance to.
Right.
I really like that. Like obviously, like David Bowie, I think is like the king of doing that. But obviously, and like Arcade Fire are a great like modern example as well. Someone like Talking Heads, where there's very kind of different ideas for songs thrown in and strange kind of approaches, but it's still pop music and it's still huge. It's like, I think it's just such a great thing to aim for, that sort of stuff. So I guess that is the biggest thing that plays on my mind, rather than like exactly how it sounds. So we all have different influences, like we all have different tastes as well, so it all kind of gets thrown in together. And
so I never like to go to a band's name, but White, I believe I read somewhere that it came from a blank slate in a way.
Yeah.
So in that sense, when you create music, when you write music, is it completely open?
Totally, like so much. Like we'll have the most like far-fetched ideas, at least in the studio. And like someone will come in with something that you're like, oh, what? And then you're just like, okay, here we go. We'll just reel that back in a bit. But I mean, like production side of things, writing side of things is as far spread as you can possibly imagine. We pinch influences from all spectrums of music. So like, and just kind of try and amalgamate them mixed with like the song. And it just becomes what it becomes. Like, I think like when an interesting thing I felt for us was that because we've spent a lot of our time even before we played writing music. So it's almost like we've had the journey of like a couple of albums worth of music, which then when working to release a debut album, you need to almost like be like, okay, what do you do here? Do you take like the first like 10 songs, 12 songs that you released and put them on a record, or do you try and amalgamate something together with like these different styles that you've written over the course of like a year and a half, 2 years? But I'd like, because it's vast as hell, we've got like super slow, powerful ballad songs to almost like kind of hip hoppy sample things. There's like almost like real like brass instrument songs, and then there's like things with like just guitar driven, there's clubby sounding songs. It's just like as far as you can get. There's like songs that sang really nicely, songs that are screamed really nicely. Like we've got the spectrum covered, you know.
I think that if we can, what we want to sort of establish quite early on is like that we're a band that will try and do one thing and then try and like don't want to be restricted to like one set of like instruments, like how Lewis talks about like doing like acoustic music and then you're kind of stuck with behind an acoustic guitar for the rest of your career. And like we wanted to establish that we could have like a song like piano led song or something like that, but also like a much more like dancey one, like an electro song. And that way you kind of, if people get on board with you early enough and they know that you're gonna do different be influenced by different genres, you can kind of have a lot more freedom to like chase down like strange alleyways to find new songs.
So was that kind of very last question, kind of the approach on the debut record, One Night Stand Forever, to kind of showcase what kind of avenues you might venture into?
Yeah, I think so. It's a sort of, it's like Lewis says, it's like a mix of the sort of different, almost like phases that we've gone through in our songwriting over the kind of past couple of years since we started as a band. And it's like, so it's got things like Sweat, which is a kind of more recent like one that's very electro and was written for the live kind of club thing. And then it's got something like Living Fiction, which is like the first song we wrote together, and that is very like kind of poppy, like single, but still quite aggressive, I guess. Yeah, and a few slower ones as well. Like This Is Not a Love Song is one that we wrote together that is more like kind of chance for me to like do my Scott Walker kind of thing, like, you know, like get a bit more like classical ballad sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's hopefully a good example of what we can do, I guess. Yeah.
So very quickly then, going on to the next record, it's everything kind of what you've done up to here. Will that be in the past then, and the next record will focus on?
I'd quite like. I mean, I think we've got like 35, 40 songs together, but I'd quite like to like put that stuff over here and then focus on writing a record, because like when you start the band, you're not like, okay, let's start a band, let's write an album. You know, you're just writing music. So I think if we could, for me at least, would focus on writing an actual record, then that's like an approach we haven't actually taken before. Because at the moment we just write song, without necessarily being like, oh, this can connect like with other tracks we've written before in the past. So I think that'd be quite a fun experiment.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Nice.